You heard President Biden come out tonight and say that he does not believe Israel is responsible for that explosion at the hospital in Gaza. The U.S. National Security Council says also, based on its current information, that is what its assessment is. Did the IDF, did Prime Minister Netanyahu share any evidence with President Biden while he was here?
Well, we shared all the intelligence we have and all the data we have with the U.S. administration. They have their own information, they have their own independent sources. They investigated and came to their own conclusions. So both the president said twice and the NSC issued a statement. I think the picture is clear. And I say to everybody, those who rush to conclusions, verify first before you rush to conclusion.
Well, we saw how quickly, things really spiraled out of control. The second half of his trip was canceled. We saw all of this unrest over this. Given the heightened environment that we're in, how concerned are you about things escalating into a bigger regional conflict?
So obviously we are following very closely what's happening in the region, and especially in our northern front. With Hezbollah, they are provoking us. There are daily aggressions, firing of missiles, of rockets, of mortars, the infiltration of armed groups, some of them Palestinian factions green-lighted by Hezbollah. This is playing with fire. This is a very dangerous situation. We send deterrent messages to them and to Iran, their patron. The U.S. administration sent messages to them through both words and indeed sending carriers to the region, and we hope the message will sink in. We have no interest in expanding the war to additional war theaters, but we will not be deterred, and if they provoke us, we have to respond.
The other announcement that came out of this visit by President Biden was on humanitarian aid. He said that Israel has agreed to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. When do you expect that to happen?
So that's correct. We discussed allowing some humanitarian aid to go to the southern part of Gaza. There is a challenge that Hamas might seize humanitarian packages that go in, and we want to avert that, and the President mentioned it in his speech as well. So some of it we hope will go immediately, and we're also working together, both our governments, to establish a mechanism for the inflow of basic humanitarian goods like water, like medicine, like food into Gaza, but we have to secure it. There has to be proper monitoring. We do not want to feed the Hamas war machine, and we will not do it.
So who's going to be that monitor?
So it depends. In the southern part of Gaza, there is a better chance of monitoring that. We are working very closely with UN agencies, and we hope that they will be able to be on the ground. But as President Biden said, and we agree, if Hamas interferes and seizes,
then the aid stops.
Good, then the aid stops, because we do not want to feed the Hamas war machine, as I explained.
And just to be clear, is any of that aid going through Israel, or is it only going through Egypt?
The aid is going to Egypt. No aid is going to Israel, because Hamas cut all electricity lines from Israel to Gaza with its rockets. They destroyed the only passage between Israel and Gaza, the Erez passage. They destroyed it, and this is a war zone, and there's public pressure. People are saying, we have 200 kidnapped there. What about their humanitarian needs? It's a crime against humanity to keep them. So why open up our border? That's why we're focused on the Egyptian border.
Okay, that's important. So it won't be going through Israel. It'll be going through Egypt.
No, it will not go through Israel.
Another thing that the president said tonight was he recalled 9/11, of course, one of the worst tragedies to happen in the U.S. And he had this word of caution, saying that after 9/11, the U.S. was he was saying don't be consumed with rage, because he was saying that the U.S. was, and he said he believed the U.S. made mistakes as it sought justice. Is Israel heeding that advice from the president tonight?
Look, people here are very emotional about what happened. What happened is a national trauma in Israel. You've seen the scenes, we all heard the voices, we have the people. It's a national trauma. It's our 9/11, and perhaps even worse because of the nature of this is not thousands of miles away, this is next door, and whole communities were wiped out. But For us, it's not only about the past, responding to their attack or their waging war on us. For us, it's about the future. Namely, we have to make sure that we destroy Hamas war machine so that they cannot ever threaten us again this way. It's about restoring deterrence. This is a strategic matter because if we do not win this war, we invite further escalation, further aggression by Hamas, its allies, and its patrons in Tehran.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And speaking of what President Biden is taking from these conversations today back to Washington with him, he plans to ask Congress for what he says is an unprecedented support package for Israel. The question is, can lawmakers approve it? We're going to ask a Republican senator who just got back from Israel where he stands next.
Meet the Jennifers, each planning their future through the Chase mobile app. Hello, new apartment. One bank for now, for later, for life. Chase, make more of what's yours.
I work at the end of the production line with metal that weighs 600 tons. I never thought I'd be a welder, but I cannot think of a better job. We're currently working on ships to train our merchant marines and ships to transport cargo and supplies. Joe Biden is bringing manufacturing back, creating good jobs, and standing up for workers. Pretty much everyone who I work with got their job because of Joe Biden. Every day I'm out here working with the team, I know he's out there working for us.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Let me be direct. You're watching football wrong. What do you call a guy in face paint that can't get the game? A clown.
Sorry, what app was it again? No, just give me a second.
Amateurs.
Oh, sorry, everybody.
DirecTV Sports Central gives you access to every game. So you never have to compromise on game day.
Was that necessary?
I was just illustrating the point.
Visit DirecTV.com for up to a $400 reward card.
Okay.
If you have moderate to severe Crohn's disease, Skyrizi is the first and only IL-23 inhibitor that can deliver clinical remission and endoscopic improvement.
Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine, or plan to. Liver problems may occur in Crohn's disease.
Control of Crohn's means everything to me. Ask your gastroenterologist about Skyrizi. Learn how AbbVie could help you save.
Choosing a treatment for your chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can be overwhelming. So ask your doctor about Botox. Botox prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine before they even start. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine treatment. So far, more than 5 million Botox treatments have been given to over 850,000 chronic migraine patients.
Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
In a survey, 92% of current users said they wish they talked to their doctor and started Botox sooner. So ask your doctor if Botox is right for you. Learn how AbbVie could help you save on Botox.
When the world of business is constantly changing, you need to stay ahead. So what about AI to generate new possibilities? Machine learning to predict what customers will like. Or expand your business by forecasting delivery routes with real-time data. With the most experience in the cloud, imagine how AWS can transform your business.
I have moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Thanks to Skyrizi, I'm playing with clearer skin. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months, and Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine, or plan to.
With Skyrizi, nothing on my skin means everything. Ask your dermatologist about Skyrizi. Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
The House House remains unable to legislate tonight without a House Speaker, but over in the Senate, the leaders of both parties there are pledging to spend the coming weeks working on what they say will be a bipartisan aid package for Israel. And I'm joined now by Republican Senator Bill Cassidy. Senator, thank you so much for being here. There was this all senators briefing today, classified briefing, of course, I know, but it was with top administration officials on Israel. Did you see, were you presented with evidence that Israel was not behind that explosion that happened at the hospital in Gaza?
They said what the president has said and what the Israelis have said, that the evidence they have is that they do not think that Israel did it. That was based upon both, let me stop there because some of it may be classified, but some of it's obviously open source. But the president himself has said that from what he has seen, it was not the Israelis, so probably I should leave it there.
Okay, and when you were in that briefing, did you get any clarity about something that has been discussed but not really, pinpointed, which is any role that Iran may have played in that attack by Hamas on Israel?
Well, when I was in Israel, I heard the same thing that I've been hearing from U.S. officials, that there is no direct evidence that Iran actually knew, that they did not, so to speak, activate it, but they've certainly enabled it. It's over the years that both by training and by transferring resources to Hamas, that Hamas was able to do something. Now, others say there's no way that Hamas would have had the sophistication of this, so that Iran must have been involved specifically in this activity. But what we've heard both from the administration and what I've heard from the Israelis is that they do not have direct evidence that Iran activated this.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for clearing that up. And you mentioned you were just here. You met with not only Prime Minister, but also his wartime cabinet that we saw President Biden meeting with earlier. The president said he plans to ask you and the rest of Congress for what he said is an unprecedented support package for Israel's defense. Is it accurate that you have heard that will be to the tune of $10 billion, and will you support that, Senator?
Yes, I have heard that, but can I see what's in it first? But I can tell you that the Congress wants to support Israel. And so, but before I say I'm going to vote for it, I at least need to look at it.
Okay, so you would like to look at that package first. Of course, there's a question of whether or not it will be here with Ukraine funding.
But I will vote to support Israel. For example, let me give you kind of, when we were there meeting with the generals and the others in the Israeli government, one of the things they requested was humanitarian aid for Palestine, for the Palestinians. So the Israelis were requesting for the humanitarian aid. I assume that's in the $10 billion because that's something that the Israelis are requesting for the Palestinians. And so I'd like to see, is that request being honored? You see where I'm going with that. There's some things I know are needed. I just want to make sure they're covered.
Senator Bill Cassidy, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Caitlin.
That's what's happening over in the Senate, but the speaker vacancy on Capitol Hill in the House is still greatly impacting what that aid to Israel could look like. 15 days in, now 2 votes in, the chaos still spiraling in the Dome tonight as a twice-denied Republican hopeful may try for a third time. Tomorrow we'll have the latest next.
Shingles. Some describe it as an intense burning sensation or an unbearable itch. This painful blistering rash can disrupt your life for weeks. It can make your workday feel impossible. The virus that causes shingles is likely already inside of you. If you're 50 years or older, ask your doctor or pharmacist about shingles.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol Turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Now's the time for cleaner indoor air with an air duct cleaning from Stanley Steamer. You've known us for carpet cleaning, but we've been cleaning air ducts for over 20 years. We do things the right way, cleaning your entire system. So if you need an air duct cleaning, call 1-800-STEAMER today.
Kayaking is my thing.
Running is awesome, but her moderate to severe eczema would make her skin so uncomfortable.
I was always so itchy, especially when I was hot.
Now my skin doesn't itch as much. Now we're staying ahead of her eczema.
There's a power inside all of us to
to live our passion, and Dupixent works on the inside to help heal your skin from within. It helps block a key source of inflammation inside the body that can cause eczema, so they can have clearer skin and less itch. Serious allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Tell your doctor about new or worsening eye problems, such as eye pain or vision changes, including blurred vision, joint aches and pain, or a parasitic infection. Don't change or stop asthma medicines without talking to your doctor.
Healing from within is a wonderful thing.
Ask your child's eczema specialist how Dupixent can help heal their skin from within.
Pretzel fanatics are freaking out. Give your taste buds a twist. We at Pretzels.com freshly bake over 45 varieties of chef-crafted gourmet pretzels in the heart of Pennsylvania. Get a new twist for someone you love or yourself at Pretzels.com.
Gotta get new wiper blades at DiscountTire.com.
Everything okay, boys?
Book your wiper blades appointment online at DiscountTire.com.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper is appointment viewing on Sunday nights. One whole story, one whole hour. The world's best journalists dig deeper into the stories they can't ignore. The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 10 on CNN.
Discover crisp morning air. Flavors of the Spice Trail. Peaceful places. Encounters with nature. And so much more. From forest trails to our urban center, West Coast warmth is ready to welcome you. Leave the cold behind. Now is the perfect time to discover Surrey.
Imagine the moment when your world comes back into focus. Healthy vision means kids can go to school, parents can provide for their families, and seniors can stay independent. For 60 years, Operation Eyesight has partnered with communities to prevent blindness and restore sight. We believe everyone deserves eye health care regardless of age, gender, or ability to pay. Visit OperationEyesight.com to donate today for all the world to see.
I'm Priscilla Alvarez at the White House, and this is CNN.
Closed captioning brought to you by Gilt. Visit Gilt.com today for up to 70% off designer brands.
Gilt has the designers that get your heart racing. At insider prices, new every day. Hurry, they'll be gone in a flash. Designer sales at up to 70% off. Shop Gilt.com today.
Tonight, there is still no leader in the House of Representatives, leaving Congress unable to do almost anything, seriously, almost anything. Congressman Jim Jordan could not get the votes again today, though he tried, yet the plan, we are told, is to vote again, publicly, tomorrow, hoping for a different outcome. Joining me tonight is CNN Capitol Hill reporter Melanie Zanona, who has been following all of this very closely. Melanie, I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's not just he's not getting the votes, the question is what's he going to do? We're now learning that there is a death threat for a member who was voting for him but then changed her vote to vote for someone else.
Yeah, things are getting incredibly tense up here as the GOP scrambles to coalesce around a speaker and as Jim Jordan struggles to get the vote. So Marinette Miller-Meeks, she is a congresswoman from Iowa. She actually voted for Jordan on the first ballot, but she flipped her vote today and voted against him. And after that vote, Caitlin, her office says that she received credible death threats in a barrage of threatening phone calls. And Caitlin, she is not the only one. Actually, just before we went on air, Congressman Nick Lalotta, another New York congressman who voted against Jim Jordan, said he received threatening messages. Threatening message I can't even really read on air because there's so many swear words and it's really disturbing stuff. But he says, I will not succumb to these threats. Now, this all comes as there's been a really intense outside conservative pressure campaign from conservative leaders, conservative media figures, urging people to call these members and urge them to support Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan, however, said he condemns these threats. He has not been involved in these arm-twisting intimidation tactics. I caught up with him earlier today. Here's what he had to say.
It never happened. It's just wrong. That's wrong. We don't want it to happen to anyone, any American, anybody, any member of Congress. It's just wrong.
So again, even though Jim Jordan himself not involved in these arm-twisting efforts, it does appear to be backfiring, and the opposition is only hardening against Jim Jordan, Caitlin.
Yeah, I mean, and just seeing this drag out, I should know, I mean, I was told that by a source that this is something that even was brought up during President Biden's meetings with Israeli officials today. The fact that there is still no House Speaker. Melanie Zanona, we will check back in with you again tomorrow night and see what the update is then. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for joining us tonight here live on the ground in Tel Aviv. We'll be back here tomorrow night. Now I'm going to turn it over to CNN News Night with Abby Phillip.
In a region known to be a powder keg, there are serious concerns that a fuse has been activated as a war of bloodshed and a war of misinformation intensifies. That's tonight on Newsnight. Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip. President Biden is scheduled to address the nation tomorrow night to discuss the conflict between Israel and Hamas that is quickly expanding. Now, the primetime address signals that Biden wants the country to be prepared for what could be a pivotal moment for the world. It also signals his confidence that Israel is not responsible for that deadly attack on a hospital in Gaza. And so far, there is good reason for him to be. As misinformation runs rampant, here is what we know so far. U.S. intelligence believes that Israel was not responsible based on missile activity, the type of explosion that they've seen, the damage, and also images of the aftermath. Now, Israel has also purported to have audio of Hamas discussing an errant missile. Meantime, the Palestinians and Hamas have not provided any specific evidence that it was an Israeli strike. Instead, Hamas is offering up conspiracies and predictably anti-Israel rhetoric. But the question is, does proof matter to an Arab world already distrustful of the West? And will that distrust fuel even more violence? I want to start now with CNN's Caitlin Collins, who is on the ground in Tel Aviv. Caitlin, President Biden is now making it very clear that he believes that, according to U.S. intelligence, Israel's version of events here when it comes to this hospital blast. What can you tell us about how he got to that point?
Yeah, I mean, it really just showcases why it's so important at a critical moment like this, when there are things happening so quickly on the ground in places like here in Tel Aviv, but also closer to the border here in Israel, to double check that information. And that is something, a message that really complicated President Biden's trip here today, as he was set to take off from Washington before he came here. That was as the White House was issuing a statement saying they were concerned about the loss of life, but they did not say who they believed in this situation. Was it the Israelis who were denying it? Was it the Palestinian authorities and what they were saying about who they believed was responsible, which of course was Israel? But when President Biden got here today, it was one of the first things that he said. It wasn't a very forceful statement initially. He said to Prime Minister Netanyahu that they believed it was the other team who was responsible for that strike. But then later on, you heard President Biden saying in his final remarks here that they did believe it was an errant rocket that came from a terrorist group in Gaza, and that is what hit that hospital and caused that deadly blast. And of course, despite whoever is responsible, still had real-life consequences for those civilians who we know have been living in dire conditions in Gaza before this war even happened. And so what we've heard from administration officials since then is that they did their own homework here. They're not just relying on Israeli denials or Israeli evidence. The Pentagon, the National Security Council, intelligence officials looked into this. They looked at open source reporting. They looked at intercepts. They looked at infrared activity. And that's how they made that determination, which they said pretty explicitly tonight that they did not believe Israel was responsible. But of course, you're right, Abby, to note this has set off a ton of protests here in the Middle East, in the area. And despite President Biden coming out and saying that, that hasn't really dampened that anger. And that is something that all of these world leaders are dealing with as they try to move forward in this conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can see there some of those protests unfolding in the Middle East. Caitlin, thank you very much. And for a closer look at what we do know and what we don't about this blast, I want to bring in CNN military analyst, retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling here. General, look, we have some video here, and I want you to just take a look at this. This is some footage that seems to show a rocket going up here, and then something happens that's pretty catastrophic. When you see this, what do you see?
I see a flame out of a rocket.
And we've been talking about this all day, and it's a result of what happened yesterday. But when you see that rocket going forward, this happens a lot with these kind of rockets that are supplied by Iran, Albie. It is a rocket motor that doesn't work. It gets a certain distance and then it just flames out, and a rocket has a trajectory of a brick once it doesn't have a force behind it, so it immediately drops. So you see it right
This is a slow motion
there,
that video.
flame out.
Yeah.
So it loses its rocket motor and then it just drops down. But what you also have when that happens is the fuel that's part of the rocket that hasn't burned. So when it hits the ground, we'll see next.
Here's the video of an explosion from a viewpoint from the ground.
Yeah. Now this isn't a very big piece of ordnance. It's a relatively small ordnance. So the actual explosive isn't that big. But what is big is the fuel that it hasn't used. That caused a lot of cars in that parking lot to burn. We see the after effects of that. We see a very small crater. If it had been a crater
let's actually take a look at what you're discussing here. I'm going to just break this down a little bit more for folks. What I'm showing you here, this is, to be clear, provided by the IDF. This shows what looks like satellite imagery of the area where this rocket may have come down, right? This is the explosion site. They're saying that if you look over here, this is what typically we would see if there was an IDF strike, even as large as 19 meters, a much larger crater. It doesn't seem like we see that here. And we also have some before and after images here. This is the hospital, the Al-Ali hospital. This is the explosion site in this area here. And here it is after. So you were just discussing the size of the crater. Some of the images are not super clear.
No.
Whether there was a crater or not, but when you look at this is up close at the cars and the site of the fire. What do you see?
Well, what I saw earlier today was a photo of a very small crater about right there. What you see in this area are a lot of burned cars. What you see over here are cars that are not burned. What you see across at this building, if you had a picture of the building, which I think we do, no, I'm sorry.
We don't have an up close of the building, but we do have
what we do see is pock marks on the side of the building.
You can look at this video here, and it shows some of the
it will show up here. You see the burned car, but as the camera scans over here, you'll see cars that aren't burned.
Yeah.
Very close. So it had an effect of the explosive capability of a rocket, which is relatively small, but a lot of fuel blowing up after it that didn't burn off the rocket motor. So this is evidence of certainly not a bomb that would come off of an aircraft. You see the pock marks, the blown out windows, but not a whole lot else. I mean, there's not a whole lot of damages to the building. Now, the doctors inside of the building said that there were patients that were injured. That could have been from the blast, glass flying inside of the building, but it certainly wasn't a strike on the hospital itself.
And just briefly, if you were to have seen a strike, a true strike coming from Israel, I want to also, just as I'm saying this, show you, this is an image that shows, according to the IDF, the trajectory of this rocket. And it comes from somewhere inside of northern Gaza, and it goes this direction. It goes east.
What you have here is something called a point of origin.
Yeah.
That's where the rocket was fired from, right where that red dot is. You see multiple tracers coming off of those. Those are the different rockets that come out of that rocket pod. The one that came out right here came out over the hospital, and I believe that was the one that lost its engine and fell on close to the hospital, not on the hospital. So this is part of the proof that the Israeli Defense Forces gave. They said, hey, this is something called a Q-36 radar. They use these radars to connect with the Iron Dome to shoot down rockets. So when you see all these coming off of a missile site and one dropping over the top of a hospital, you can see where it was truthfully an accident, a missile that didn't go through to its final mission.
Yeah, and as you pointed out many times, these Iranian-provided missiles, they tend to do that. General Mark Herdling, thank you very much for breaking all of that down for us. And President Biden, reflecting on the difficult decisions ahead for Israel's leaders, here is part of what he said.
I made wartime decisions. I know the choices are never clear or easy for the leadership. There's always cost, but it requires being deliberate. requires asking very hard questions. It requires clarity about the objectives and an honest assessment about whether the path you're on will achieve those objectives. The vast majority of Palestinians are not Hamas. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people.
I want to bring in now Aviv Ezra, a senior Israeli diplomat at the New York consulate and a former consul general in Chicago. Aviv, thank you for being here. This incident has had real ripple effects, and putting aside for a moment any dispute about who's responsible and who's not, we just broke that down. Has it altered Israel's plans for a ground invasion of Gaza?
Well, the way we see it, this is actually a triple war crime. On the one hand, they're sending missiles from population areas in Gaza. They're shooting at population, innocent civilians in Israel. And thirdly, when they misfire, they hit their own population in the Gaza Strip. So for us, this is not only a triple war crime, it is something that later on took a life of its own into the conversation of who is in charge. And the fake news that came out of it with the entire conversation last 24 hours ago created a situation where Israel was guilty before we finished.
But I'm sure you can imagine that that is likely to happen here. Does the fallout from this, even if it's as a result of misinformation, change the calculus for Israel as it tries to decide what happens if there is a ground invasion, and whether that is something that can be done or should be done right now?
Well, for Israel, it's pretty clear that we have to make sure that what happened in October 7th would not happen again. Therefore, we want to make sure that we extract the price tag from Hamas.
What is the price tag from the Israeli people, the Palestinian people? Because they've borne really the brunt of the burden here.
Correct. So we want to differentiate between the Palestinian people and Hamas. And like the president said, Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas is a terror organization, a vicious, barbaric terror organization that needs to pay a price. And by the way, when they talk about free Gaza, I think they talk about free Gaza from Hamas. So we are doing everything we can to make sure to make that differentiation. We open corridors, safe corridors, to have the innocent population go down south. We invested 4 days that we are waiting to make sure that they make it out. We create safe shelters over there. We actually have, on the other hand, Hamas pushing them back into the war zone, by that creating another war.
Do you understand why there's so much distrust in the Arab world of the information coming from the IDF and the narrative about what happened in this hospital blast? And how is Israel going to deal with the fact that some of that distrust comes from a real place? Because there have been past incidents in which the IDF has given incorrect information.
Well, the IDF, I think, is most of the time that we are focused on investigating and understanding what happened. It takes time. This is what happened this time around. This is what happened in the past. When we get it wrong, we try to fix it, and sometimes we also try to fix things that we have got wrong in the past. I think credibility is crucial here. We are comparing between a liberal democracy with checks and balances and a terror organization, and I think at this time it's black and white. We have to first of all stand by Israel, like the president said.
All right, Aviv Ezra, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And ahead for us, President Biden is facing a significant moment in his primetime address for tomorrow. Fareed Zakaria joins me live, plus this.
President Biden, not all America's with you on this one. And you need to wake up and understand that. We are literally watching people commit genocide and killing a vast majority just like this. And we still stand by and say nothing. We will remember this.
A Democratic congresswoman criticizing Biden at a protest calling for a ceasefire in Gaza after she blamed Israel for the hospital bombing. This is CNN's special live coverage.
At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. We designed smarter ways to detect motion for fast emergency response. We create HD cameras so you can see what's happening in your home from anywhere. All powered by Fast Protect technology, exclusively from SimpliSafe for faster police response. Now install our advanced system your way. Have a pro set it up or easily do it yourself. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
This is a keepsake frame. This is actually a photo from my wedding. I I'm Adam Weiss, founder and CEO of Keepsake, the mobile app that makes it easy to have your photos printed, framed, and shipped to your doorstep. You just choose a photo that you love, you can preview it in over 100 frames, and in a couple of days, you're going to receive your photo in a beautiful, handmade frame. So if you've got a special photo on your phone, install the free Keepsake app. We would love a chance to frame it for you.
I suffer with psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis. I was on a journey for a really long time to find some relief. Cosentix works for me.
Cosentix helps real people get real relief from the symptoms of psoriatic arthritis or psoriasis, serious allergic reactions, severe skin reactions that look like eczema, and an increased risk of infections, some fatal, have occurred. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen.
I move so much better because of Cosentix.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentix.
Hi, I'm Jill, and I've lost 56 pounds on Golo.
Hi, I'm Barry, and I've lost 42 pounds. Jill and I are a team. If she tells me to do something, I usually jump on board.
Golo is doable, it's realistic, and it's something we can do the rest of our lives.
How do we decide what hotel to book? Fear not.
I got you. Choice Hotels is a hotel for every type of stay. Like a comfort with the kiddos.
Spacious.
That's what they all say. Stay twice and get a free night when you book direct at choicehotels.com.
I have a structured settlement and I need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now. I have an annuity, but I need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
More real estate professionals list properties with Realtor.com than any other site.
Really?
Really. Trust the #1 app real estate professionals trust. Download the Realtor.com app today.
Diabetes can serve up a lot of questions. Like, what is your glucose and can you have more carbs? Before you decide, with the Freestyle Libre 2 system, know your glucose level and where it's headed, no finger sticks needed. Manage your diabetes with more confidence and lower your A1C. The #1 doctor-prescribed CGM, Freestyle Libre 2. Try it for free at freestylelibre.us.
This wasn't no bear. It was like a bear squatch.
Dad, what's a bear squatch?
It's a cross between a bear and a sass. It's made up. He's usually sleeping.
He'll never sleep again.
As President Biden returns from Israel tonight, it is not uncommon for American presidents to visit active war zones. But what is rare is that between Ukraine and Israel, this president has now visited 2 war zones that don't directly involve U.S. troops. FDR famously met with Stalin and Churchill in the 40s, becoming the first president to ride on a plane. LBJ went to South Vietnam twice in 2 years, followed by Nixon. Several presidents hit the Korean DMZ, including Carter and Reagan. Bush 41 spent Thanksgiving in Saudi Arabia during Desert Shield, and then later Somalia during a civil war. His successor went to Bosnia twice for peacekeeping missions. Bush 43 made at least 6 trips to war zones, mostly Iraq and Afghanistan, of course. The same for Obama, to those 2 nations at least 4 times. Now, Trump visited Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as his infamous visit to the DMZ to see Kim Jong-un. And it is noteworthy, though, this context, because in his speech today, President Biden connected some wars of the past in a warning to Israel.
Justice must be done. But I caution this: while you feel that rage, don't be consumed by it. After 9/11, we were enraged in the United States. While we sought justice and got justice, we also made mistakes.
Here to discuss President Biden's visit and where we go from here is CNN's Fareed Zakaria. He's the host of Fareed Zakaria GPS. Fareed, President Biden made this visit, a very short but important visit to Israel. Did it help or did it hurt what is happening on the ground?
Oh, I think it helped. Look, President Biden understands that in order to have any kind of influence over Israeli policy going forward, he first and most importantly needed to affirm that he supported Israel, that he understood the horror they had just been through with this terror attack, that he had Israel's back, that the United States had Israel's back. And that, in a sense, if you think about this as Israel's 9/11, first and foremost, sending a message of support and reassurance was absolutely crucial. It was the only message to send, and he actually did it very well and eloquently. But now he is transitioning to providing friendly advice to an ally. And that advice is very important, and President Biden couched it very well by talking about American mistakes after 9/11. After 9/11, America was traumatized. It acted out of emotion and fear and rage. And looking back, there were a number of things the United States did that didn't help achieve the objectives it was looking for, that actually backfired in many ways. So what he's saying to the Israelis is, learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, it's a very notable message. It jumped out in everything that he had to say. One of the other backdrops of this trip, of course, is this explosive story of what happened in this hospital strike. And we are quickly entering this moment where misinformation around this stuff is having very serious consequences. It's not just the fog of war at this point on the battlefield, it's global. What do you think that this means for the conflict if we cannot determine what is true and what is not quickly enough to prevent it from spiraling out of control?
Look, this is one of the most partisan issues in the world. It has always divided the Arab world and Israel. It has always divided the world. So we shouldn't be so surprised that people have, kind of alternate narratives. But I do think it is dangerous to let these fester. I was actually surprised at how quickly experts were able to come to a reasonable analysis. And as far as I can tell, the weight of evidence very much is that this was not an Israeli airstrike. This was probably exactly what Mark Hertling said, a failed rocket launch. I think it would be very important in that situation to keep putting out more and more evidence as it accumulates, more photographs. Perhaps there are remnants of the missile one can find or photograph, because I do think that pushing back against what appears to be a manufactured story, or really more people conveniently believing the part of the truth they want to believe, is part of what the problem here is. And the United States and Israel should provide as much evidence as they can to break that narrative. Now, will it work? I don't know, but at least it will show a good faith effort. It will provide more evidence. The Israelis already have done some of that. The United States has done some of that. But otherwise, I think it becomes one of these issues that, like so much of what we experience today, one side has its truth and the other side has its truth. And I think particularly for us in the media, it is important, just as you did with Mark Hertling, to try to arrive at some kind of more objective analysis of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, we may not be able to say definitively, I'm not on the ground at the site of the strike, but there is evidence out there that we can analyze. Fareed, as you just pointed out, people have made their minds up. I want to get your response to some comments made by Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib earlier today on Capitol Hill.
What can you do?
Pretty early on.
What can you do before misinformation goes out too quickly and people get the wrong idea and start to act on that, and then splat. People are getting all passionate about what they think. When it's false, falsified information, misinformation that you think is true, is danger, 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 danger. Look at you. She's an example of that, when the truth shows clearly that it was from a terrorist organization. In the Gaza Strip, you see, it was not Israel firing bombs at a hospital and killing Palestinians. No, she's got it all wrong, and so does the rest of the Arab world.
Figure should be careful and get as much objective information as you can before rushing to judgment. You know, as I say, it does appear the weight of evidence suggests that the congresswoman was wrong about the fact that or the conjecture that Israel this was an Israeli airstrike. But I also think she's wrong about where the American public is with regard to President Biden's handling of this. I think President Biden is handling this pretty well, effectively. He's taken it very seriously. He's exercising American leadership, not just, as I said, in providing Israel with support and then counseling Israel to be wise and cautious and strategic in how it strikes. He's also put two carrier task forces in to deter outside actors. The most important thing here, certainly from an American point of view, is that this conflict not spread. And what he is showing is that the United States really is indispensable in this situation. The Russians can't play that role, the Chinese can't play that role, and the president is taking it seriously. The little polling I've seen on this suggests that most Americans are comfortable, in fact even support what the president is doing. Obviously that might change, but I think that there is a tendency sometimes with these kind of situations to you know, again, to let emotion and anger and fear and rage overwhelm what has actually been a fairly strategic and wise course the president has taken.
Well, Fareed, your insights into all of this are also indispensable. We really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yay, Fareed.
Thank you.
And up next for us.
This is about two little boys who will never get to play together again.
He's the 6-year-old boy allegedly murdered in Chicago for being Muslim by someone who was angry about the war. I'll speak with the mother of this little boy's best friend next.
Dozens of rockets coming in here. Those interceptions right above us.
We have been hearing repeated exchanges of gunfire.
You can see the scale of the destruction.
If you know anything about what they do to people in Gaza, that is worse than death.
My children and grandchildren experienced a living hell.
How difficult is this fight going to be on the ground?
We have no other place to go.
Breaking news coverage continues live from Israel.
Why didn't we do this last year?
Before you were preventing migraine with Qulipta? Remember the pain? Cancel plans, the worry?
That was then. And look at me now. You'll never truly forget migraine, but Qulipta reduces attacks, making 0 migraine days possible. It's the only pill of its kind that blocks CGRP and is approved to prevent migraine of any frequency, to help give you that forget you get migraine feeling. Don't take if allergic to Qulipta. Most common side effects are nausea, constipation, and sleepiness. Learn how AbbVie could help you save. Qulipta, the forget you get migraine medicine. Julian's about to learn that free food is a personal eating trigger.
No, it isn't. Yes, it is.
And that's just bit of psychology Julian learned from Noon Wave. Sign up now at noon.com.
We're being flooded with false information. The more we mindlessly share, the more misinformation threatens us and puts our democracy at risk. But together, we can help protect our communities before it's too late. It's time to check our sources and verify our facts. Let's care before we share.
We're here with Chris Cudahan of our local leaf filter. Tell us how leaf filter is different from every other gutter protection on the market.
With Leaf Filter's patented filter technology, there are no gaps, no openings, no place for debris to get in at all. We install Leaf Filter on your existing gutters. You'll never have to climb a ladder to clean out your gutters again.
You know, that's peace of mind and then some. So how do people sign up?
To schedule your free inspection, call 833 Leaf Filter today. Our agents are standing by.
We will no longer be prisoners to you, Winter. We shall fly south to where the courts are eternally bright, and we will do so with Consumer Cellular. The same coverage for up to half the cost. When freedom calls, we're here to answer.
A song by Paul Beckman, Paul Rainbow Song. Also the new first leader of humankind in the free world. time to check our sources and check our facts. Always question authority for the truth. Created October 18th, 2023. It's time to check our sources and check our facts. Always question authority for the truth. It's time to question our sources and facts. Seeking truth, well, it behooves us always to have to check our sources and check our facts, yeah. Check our sources and check our facts. Always question authority. I got your back. Whoa, yeah. Check our sources, check our facts. That's the only way you can have someone's back, yeah. Check your sources and check your facts. Always question authority for the truth. That's right, yeah. That's right, yeah. That's what you gotta do in this world, especially today with so much misinformation going around.
And he kept saying it over and over again, and it was just we didn't know what he was talking about at first, but then the school picture came home, the class picture, and there was Wadi, and we were just so excited that he made a connection with somebody at school that he was talking about, and so we just kind of we had to go, meet this little boy at school. We would go for classroom parties and things, and it just kind of grew from there. The teachers, his teachers told me that they pair them up a lot at school, so they, did a lot of stuff together. But he was just a sweet little boy. We all just kind of got attached to him. He rode the bus with Dexter, so he would, we would see him every day, and it was just, it was just they were just friends. They were classmates and friends, and they just wanted to play together, and so
this has been such an incredible tragedy for this community. What have you been able to tell Dexter about what happened to his friend? Does he know about any of this?
Well, I mean, he knows something is going on, something big. I tried to just kind of explain to him that Wadia had to go away to heaven. It was really hard for me to use an excuse. Some people, told me, well, just tell him he moved away, tell him he went on vacation, and I didn't feel like that was the right thing to do, because eventually he's going to figure out what really happened, and I want to start now, just trying to get him adjusted and make sure that he's okay. Again, seen a little bit of change in him, but I think right now he's just processing it, and fortunately we have a wonderful school. Our administration, our teachers, they're doing a wonderful job with all the kids. So I think they're going to be okay. but it's something I should never, no parent ever should have to do this. They should never have to tell, their child that, something so horrible happened to their son. And, now we're keeping it pretty light, but someday he's going to learn, what happened.
And Cynthia, I know that Dexter is nearby. Does he want to say anything about his friend?
Dexter, come here real quick. Come here. I want to give you a hug. Oh, hi. Do you want to say hi?
Hi, Dexter. Hi. Hey, Dexter.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, how are you? How are you feeling?
How are you feeling? Are you feeling good?
Feeling good.
Yeah,
You're feeling
good.
good?
Right?
Good. Dexter, I've been hearing about your friend. Roddy. Can you tell me about him? Do you like your friend?
Shall I say I love Lydia? Yeah, you're gonna be.
Yeah.
Can you tell him that you love Lydia? He said that earlier. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Good. I know you do. Thank you for saying hi, Dexter.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Say bye-bye. Bye. Good night.
Cynthia, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And up next for us, Erin Burnett joins me on her powerful conversation with the parents of 2 children who were kidnapped by Hamas. You'll hear the phone call with their daughter when the militants attacked. That's next.
It's easy to get lost in investment research. Introducing JP Morgan Personal Advisors.
Hey, David.
Connect with an advisor to create your personalized plan.
Let's find the right investments for your goals.
Okay, great.
JP Morgan Wealth Management.
So many hotels.
Trouble booking the family vacation? Come on.